Okay, hi everyone. My name is Elisha Mahali, and welcome to Story Alchemy. And Story Alchemy is where I share tips and tricks for writing and story crafts so that you can create meaningful and entertaining stories. Okay, so today I want to talk about how to generate story ideas with the fish out of water method. Okay, so the fish out of water method, a simple engine for endless story ideas. Okay, and I know that like thinking of story ideas, that's usually the first step to writing a story. I mean, sometimes you have a character or a scene or something. But in general, if you want to turn that in anything, any ideas that you have into a story, you need a basic idea for like what is the story about. So this is one of my favorite ways to come up with story ideas. And it's one of the most reliable ways to generate fiction ideas, especially when the page feels stubbornly blank. And that is the fish out of water method. And you've probably encountered it before, even if you didn't have a name for it. It's a character that is taken out of the environment where they feel competent, fluent, and in control, and placed somewhere that is the opposite of who they are, either in personality or identity or both. And from that mismatch, story emerges. And I just want to say one of the reasons why I really also love this method is because it just reminds me of how each one of us is a guf and a neshama, a body and a soul, and the soul is inside of the body, and it's like complete two opposite, the body and the soul are completely opposite of each other, and yet we have to learn how to, in order to live a healthy life, we need to learn how to connect body and soul. And I think that's like what a story does also, especially when it uses the fish out of water method. It's how can, the character grow by being put in this situation that's like opposite of who they are, and that's actually going to be what ends up bringing out the best in them. At its simplest, the method looks like this. Take a character who belongs somewhere, put them somewhere they don't. Pay attention to what cracks first and why it works. Stories thrive on pressure. When a character's familiar rules no longer apply, every choice becomes harder. Their instincts fail them. Their self image is challenged. The situation forces them to confront something they've been avoiding or didn't even know they believed. This kind of tension does a lot of narrative work for us. Instead of inventing plot twists, we let the environment do the pushing. So, first of all, it might feel kind of mean, like, oh no, I'm gonna like my character with their perfect life, and I'm gonna just plop them into somewhere where they don't really belong. And it might feel kind of mean, but if you think about it in real life, that we grow when we're pushed against our comfort zone. And and also like it's really going to when everything that a person is familiar with is taken away from them, or at least in one area of their life, um, you're forced to really dig deeper for inner resources. So it's really just a way of bringing out the best in your character. Even though they are going to have to face some level of discomfort to get there. And also for us as writers, readers, it's like it's very interesting for readers to read these type of stories because it's like the tension and the pressure, and it's like what's going to happen next. And it really helps that the story unfolds for us as the writer, instead of having to bang our heads against the wall, like what happens next, what should happen in this story. This it's like a very good jumping board. Um, okay, so I want to give you one example today of a fish out of water story and how I use the fish out of water method to generate a story idea. And most of my stories, I think I actually use this method. Um, but and I used it for my latest short story that I wrote, and it was published in Family First, and it's called Unedited. And it's about a perfectionist newborn photographer who has a baby with a cleft lip. So yeah, that is a perfect example of fish out of water because if you imagine a perfectionist newborn photographer and like what situation could you put her in, that's the opposite of everything that they're used to is a baby with a cleft lip. Um, and I use the fish out of water method to generate this idea. It kind of started backwards for me because a lot of times you start with the character, a type of character, and it's like, what environment could I put them in? That's the opposite of, what they're used to. And in this case, I started with the environment. Um, so I had a baby that was born with a cleft palate, and it is a different experience than cleft lip. There isn't that same visible cosmetic element. It gave that idea to me of like, oh, like, okay, cleft palate, not interesting enough for a fiction story, or maybe it could be, but I wanted to do also something different than exactly what's happening in my own life. So then I thought of cleft lip. And then I said, oh, cleft lip, there's that cosmetic element there. And I thought, what if I explored a character for whom the visual aspect mattered enormously? What kind of person would find themselves truly destabilized by having a baby with a cleft lip? So I started thinking, so like I said, I had the idea, the situation, and the environment of a baby with a cleft lip. And it's like, what type of character would get thrown off by that? And that's how I thought of a perfectionist newborn photographer. So I thought, for whom would this situation turn the world upside down? The answer came quickly, a perfectionist newborn photographer, someone whose professional life revolves around controlling light angles, details, and flaws, someone trained to notice and correct imperfections for a living. Once that pairing clicked, the character and the situation, the ideas began to snowball. The tension was built in. And then from there, like I thought of all the other characters in the story, and more and more ideas started coming to me about what the story could look like. Because if you read the story, you'll see that there is other things going on in there besides for her baby with the cleft lip. And I don't want to give everything away, but there was dynamics that were going on with other characters that her perfectionism was pressing up against. The story didn't need to be forced or plotted from scratch. It grew naturally out of the mismatch between who the character was and the reality she was suddenly living inside. Okay, so here's an exercise for you, a fish out of water exercise, a story generation exercise. So first you make a list, choose one of the following. Write down 5 types of characters, professions, personalities, identities, belief systems, or write down 5 types of life situations or environments, settings, circumstances, communities, emotional states. Don't overthink originality here. Familiar types work just fine. Okay, so step 2, create the mismatch. For each character or situation, ask, what kind of character or situation would be the opposite of this? What pairing would feel uncomfortable, destabilizing, or upside down? Upside down, I like that word. Think in terms of values, instincts, skills, or assumptions, not just surface differences. Step 3, apply pressure. Once you've chosen a pairing, ask, what would this character need to learn in order to survive or thrive in this new environment? What instincts or beliefs would fail them at first? What does this environment force them to confront about themselves? Step 4, find the story. Finally, write 1 paragraph answering this question. What changes first, the character or their understanding of the world? That shift is where the story begins. Okay, and if you do this exercise or you want to share anything about this exercise or questions, comments, I would love to hear, as always. And if you have any writing or storycraft questions for our next story alchemy, I would love to hear them. All right, everyone, thanks for listening.